Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet, coming to you from Washington, D.C. and the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And we have a number of people that are looking around the world and looking at the various issues of climate change, environmental degradation, of renewable energy, safe water, wastewater, all the things that we have to face as the planet adds another 2 billion people by 2050. And so we have one gentleman who's been working for a long time to bring the best of the best that's being shot around the globe and film. This is Peter O'Brien. He's the Executive Director of the Environmental Film Festival in the nation's capital. Peter is coming in to us by Skype, and sitting right beside me is William Bill Busker, who is the Executive Vice President with Emerald Planet, and he's here in case we lose Peter by Skype. So Peter, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about the Environmental Film Festival and the tagline in the nation's capital. That's quite unique in the names of environmental film festivals.
Well, as the name suggests, the Environmental Film Festival takes place in Washington, D.C., and it's a 2-week festival. It takes place every March, and has been going strong for 22 years. And the 22nd Environmental Film Festival will take place in March 2014 from the 18th to the 30th. So it's a festival that really is a part of Washington's cultural life. We're a collaborative festival. We work with over 100 different organizations throughout Washington, from universities and embassies to NGOs and international institutions to help present the films that we screen.
Well, I thought I was doing really well. I attend at least 20 up to about 30 a year, and now you say there's over 100 of these, which I know about, and it doesn't feel like I've done so much in that period of time, but the films are excellent, and you're to be commended on the quality of what you're bringing to Washington, D.C. But in extended form, you're taking it to the world because many launch right here in Washington, D.C. Isn't that correct, Peter?
That's true, and one thing that's been interesting to see over recent years is the proliferation of environmentally themed film festivals in other parts of the country and really worldwide. And ours is the largest showcase of environmental film, and we find that a lot of the films that we screen end up getting picked up by other similar festivals. So it really helps them to show in our festival, and then they get a chance often to get around to many other places.
Well, I think it's fantastic that you actually have this as a springboard, and again shows leadership that's coming from your organization, but also out of Washington, D.C. What do you think are some of the most important attributes of the Environmental Film Festival, and how do you think others around the globe perceive what's going on in Washington, D.C. through the festival?
Well, as I mentioned, the collaborative nature of the festival really is a key aspect of it for us, and just the amount of time that we put into working with a variety of different organizations, and the amount of time and effort that those organizations put into to helping find the films and screen them, and then also getting as many filmmakers as we can to the festival. And of course, filmmakers usually love to come to Washington and show their film in Washington, so we give an opportunity for that. And then also to be able to take advantage of the environmental expertise that is here in this city. And we have a lot of speakers, and we have panels associated with a number of the screenings and question and answer sessions. So we can really take advantage of all the great environmental expertise here to really enhance those programs for the people attending them.
I know that's one of the significant aspects of going to one of the films, where you have the opinion leaders and you even have the producer or the director of the film right there, and so you can have, even though it's in a crowd, it's almost a one-to-one ratio of being able to hear firsthand about how they conceived the film itself and the importance of it. So I think that really enhances everything. What are some of the significant environmental issues that have been featured through the film festival?
Well, we've had really a very diverse selection of issues that we've featured in our films. We've looked at conservation, wildlife conservation. We've looked at subjects like mountaintop removal mining or the tar sands in Canada, and Keystone Pipeline, energy issues. We've looked at issues affecting the oceans. We often have very strong programs on the oceans, water issues throughout the world, and the built environment and urban environments and the impact of cities on the environment. So we're really trying to get as broad a scope as possible on the variety of environmental issues that are out there.
And I know in what you're doing too, Peter, that you work very hard to internationalize this. So you have many films are coming, either the filmmakers from here going abroad or actually inviting the films in from around the globe. How difficult is it to reach out and connect with the filmmakers in other countries? Or because of the 22 years that you've been in existence, it's very easy now to know who some of the best filmmakers that are around the globe?
Yeah, it's a major priority for us, and our festival's very international. We have films from dozens of countries around the world every year, and part of that is just the amount of time that we've been working on it, the relationships we have. It helps quite a lot to be able to work with so many different embassies in Washington. They very often help us make connections with filmmakers overseas, and often the embassies will help to bring those filmmakers to the festival as well. So that's part of the film selection that really makes the festival so interesting. Is just to see all these different environmental films done in different styles by filmmakers really from every continent.
Well, we have Bill Busker sitting right beside me, and he's very much involved in what's going on around us. But since we've been able to keep you on Skype, we're going to let him ask the next question.
Hi, Peter. Can you tell us about some of the notable filmmakers and special guests that have shared their expertise at the festival?
Well, we've had very many, as I mentioned, filmmakers and experts every year. There are some big names occasionally that we're able to get into the festival. We've had Robert Redford come for a film that he produced about the Colorado River called Watershed. And Ken Burns has come to the festival and recently showed his film The Dust Bowl. And we had the former head of the EPA, Lisa Jackson, at the time head of the EPA, came and spoke as well. So those are some big names that we've had recently, and we always try and get interesting people from the world of film and the world of the environment to come to the events.
What makes the film festival such a really a broad but also very beneficial educational experience?
Well, I think it really helps a lot to have people there who can take questions and after the screenings, especially with many of the films. They're very issue-oriented and have a lot of information in them. You find that the audience really wants to engage afterwards and really wants to ask questions, and so that we really make that a point and a priority to have as many screenings as possible. Have someone either introducing the films or there for Q&A, whether it's the filmmakers or environmentalists.
I know as I travel around the district and go to some of the different showings, there are some very large venues and smaller, more intimate venues. How do you measure the impact of the film festival, both as participation and also as just the long-lasting effects that it has on the people that participate?
Well, it's an interesting question. Of course, we, in working with so many different partners, we really are trying to be an event, an organization that reaches out to the entire community to the extent that we can. And as far as the impact that we have on the individuals who come to the festival, it's really it's a hard thing to measure. We do surveys both during and after the events, and from those surveys we're able to tell that certainly there are people whose behavior is changed because of the films that they've seen. But I think that the impact of films really can be very long-lasting, and it can be subtle, and that impact is maybe harder to actually measure, but it's equally important.
Well, I think that's wonderful in what you're doing, and I know by just the comments of people around me and how people really almost become part of these films, because some of them are so explicit as far as particularly the wildlife films and then the nature scenes and all that. So it really does have a lasting impression. We only have about 50 seconds left, Peter, so this will be a long question, but a quick answer. What's your vision for the Environmental Film Festival, say over the next 5, 10, 15 years as we do move towards 2050?
Well, I think we really want to maintain the strong position that we have in Washington and the relationships that we've built up over the years with different organizations. And at the same time, I think there really are some great opportunities to work with other film festivals throughout the world and to expand our presence online as well.
So, well, that means you're going to use all the social media and reach out, and you truly are becoming, even though it's, as you say, festival in the nation's capital, it really is a worldwide event now. And so, Peter O'Brien, the Executive Director of the Environmental Film Festival, thank you for being with us, and thank you, viewer, for being with us as we bring you this information on a week-to-week basis as we create the Emerald Planet.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. as we look around the globe looking for the very best issues that are going to be impacting and also the best practices that can address how we're going to be able to handle a planet with 9 billion people by 2050 and possibly up to 12 billion by the end of the century. And so we have a number of people that are actually involved in film and are very much involved in how that they're going to be able to show what is really transpiring as far as the environment is concerned. Climate change and all the other issues are relevant as we move through the 21st century. We have Hal Weiner, who is an award-winning documentary producer. He's also the co-director and producer of Journey to Planet Earth. He's coming in by Skype. Hal, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. And I'm going to let you just kick off a little bit about Journey to Planet Earth, and then we're going to play one of the scenes from that. So just tell us, what is Journey to Planet Earth?
Well, it's a continuing environmental series, primetime series, that's been on PBS since, I think it was 1998, 1999, something like that. And our host, Matt Damon, who is a very strong part of the series. And what we do is we do 1 hour episodes, and we look at what we think are the most pressing issues of presently and in the future. So we've covered a whole range of subjects, from grasslands to food security and the oceans, etc.
Well, we're glad you're doing that, and you really tee it up for us because we're all about solutions and best practices, so we're actually following your lead, Hal, in many ways. But we're going to play one of the shorts. This is about renewable energy and running our cities in the future. So hold with us just for a minute.
Sure.
Sources of energy, featuring high-speed intracity connections, urban landscapes built to complement a highly electrified economy, residential homes surrounded by green space and located within walking distance of commercial centers and light rail transportation hubs. In the future, cities will be designed for people, not cars. And there'll be much less noise and air pollution, thanks to hybrid plug-in cars, all-electric cars, and state-of-the-art light rail. What an exciting place that would be, and what a legacy to leave the next generation. An economy based on energy sources that will never run out. We've never been able to do this before. Ever since the Industrial Revolution began, we've been investing in temporary sources of energy. Oil fields that would run out, coal mines that would run out. Now suddenly we can build an entirely new world. A world powered almost entirely with renewable sources of energy. That's an enormous challenge, but it's one that we must face, and face with a sense of urgency.
Hal, that is
the Amazon rainforest.
Absolutely excellent, and thank you for sharing that with us. Tell us about some of the new episodes that are coming up, say, over the next few months.
Well, the next episode will be in the spring. We're just in post-production. It's called Extreme Realities. And what we're looking at is the link between extreme weather events, climate change, and how it affects national security issues. Probably, this will be our 13th episode, and I think it's probably our most important. So we're looking at places like a sea level rise in Bangladesh. We're looking at the spread of terrorism in sub-Saharan Africa, linked to poaching and piracy We're looking at the influx of the strengthening of Taliban as they go in and provide, of all things, humanitarian relief in places like Pakistan. The other stories we're doing in this particular episode deal with the Arctic, the melting of the sea ice in the Arctic, and how it can lead to tensions of countries that surround the Arctic. We're also looking at the Gulf of Mexico, which is probably the most important source of not only seafood, but petroleum and other sources of energy.
Well, looking at all the topics that you're highlighting on Journey to Planet Earth, how did you actually choose the name for your production, Journey to Planet Earth?
Well, originally it was called Mission to Planet Earth, but NASA sort of took that name, so we changed it to. The whole concept is that the Earth is a integrated system. What happens in one part of the world affects people clear across the other part of the world. So we're looking at the Earth as a unified environment and trying to talk about how people are affected around the world simultaneously.
Well, looking at what you're doing and the number of countries that are involved, it sounds like you really are covering the planet, and of course Antarctica and the Arctic with the dramatic changes going on there. Is there one particular area of the Earth that you've been able to view and film where you see more dramatic change than maybe some other areas that you've been to?
Well, there's been a few. We did a film several years ago in Uzbekistan and traveled to the RLC. And the RLC, 20 years ago, was a vibrant fishery. And through a variety of environmental reasons, the RLC is drying up today. And that was quite devastating to the people who live there, because disease was spread, because when there's no water left in a sea, and if you pumped a lot of pollutants into it, then you have windstorms that are quite dangerous. 1 second. The other place was sub-Saharan Africa. It's quite a serious suffering from so much poverty and drought in particular.
Yeah, I know how the whole thing is that drought is really becoming a scourge all over the earth. If you just look what's happening in Australia, many places in Africa, but even in China, India, and many other countries. But we have Bill Busker, who is the Executive Vice President for Emerald Planet, right beside me, and he's here, Hal, in case we lose you by Skype, but we've been doing quite well with that. So I'm going to let him ask the next question.
Sure.
Hi, Hal. Are there favorite locations from episodes that you've already shot?
Well, from a filmmaker standpoint, Vietnam and India were the most beautiful, the most exotic. The colors are very special in those places. The one particular location, though, that would be hard to forget was Bangladesh. We were there, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, and we were going to do a story about cholera. And while we were there was a secular holiday that we attended, and there was 100,000 people going to show up at a particular location in the middle of Dhaka. And when we got there, it was early in the morning, and my wife and co-producer, director, said, no, we should not go to this particular location. And she's never said that before. So we set up cameras about maybe 50 yards from that particular location. And as soon as we set up the cameras, the first bomb went off. And 30 seconds later, the second bomb went off. And these suicide bombers had picked the one spot where all the journalists were, and we were lucky not to be there. And 10 of our colleagues were killed. But so what turned out to be a film that was going to be about cholera really got us thinking about the link between the pressures of climate change and national security issues. That particular bombing was attributed to the Taliban. But the fact is that when a country is a failing state or a fragile state, and then when they have also problems with delivery of water, when they have a problem of food, it leaves an opening for terrorists to sort of infiltrate. And we saw that firsthand, and that's really why 8 years later, we're doing this particular episode.
Well, we've had several military experts and even several generals on this program over time talking about the best practices to use in countries like Bangladesh or Uganda, many other places where there are just so many challenges that they have, and with the accelerating population rate in those areas, plus the severe climate change, it really just sets it up so that the terrorists can come in and do their dastardly deeds. What are some of the other unusual experiences that you've had? And I just noticed we're just about out of time, Hal. You've done a fantastic job in sharing with us. So we only have about a minute. What is next on your agenda, and how do you tie in, this national security and the addressing the scourges of climate change in a package?
Well, first of all, I think I have to give out a shout out.
We only have about 30 seconds left.
DC Environmental Film Festival, and that's more important than anything else, because what they do for the local community and the national community and the global community is very, very important, because they bring to the public some of the great films that are being made, and that's really, really quite important for your folks to understand and participate if they can.
Well, we're going to do it. Hal Weiner, who is the award-winning documentary producer, also the co-director and producer of Journey to Planet Earth, is just sharing about his films. And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip at AOL.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Welcome into the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are going to be useful to help to increase the quality of life for about 2 billion new people are going to be joining us on the planet by 2050. And so how we're going to actually share information about what these best practices are, how we're going to be able to address the issues of humankind when we have 9 billion souls populating this sphere. And how do we communicate that so that people are actually aware of where we're going and how we need to address the issues of climate change and environmental impact. And we have someone who's really an expert at that, has been doing this for some time. Her name is Katie Carpenter. She is the producer of a film that's just out called Battle for the Elephants. And also I want to put in there, and I just learned this myself, that she's a member of the advisory board for the Environmental Film Festival in the nation's capital. And Katie, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Glad to have you. Tell us, what is the Battle for the Elephants?
The Battle for the Elephants is a film that we made, director John Conway made for National Geographic Television. It aired on PBS, and now it's in distribution around the country through individual screenings as well as abroad. It's a film about the recent surge in elephant poaching and the illegal ivory trade. And for this film, we shot in Kenya, in Tanzania, and in China in an effort to understand what's driving the demand for ivory and who's manipulating the trade.
Well, this whole thing about the consumers of ivory, of course, is many nations around the planet, but also how the ivory gets into the underground and underwrites terrorism and guerrilla movements around the planet. I mean, there's links everywhere with that, and so thank you for sharing that with us. But we have a trailer that we're going to start right now, Katie, and introduce this film, Battle for the Elephants. So we're going to play that and we'll come back and have another chat.
There was a time when the African elephant numbered in the millions. Seasons were measured by their comings and goings, and they had no enemy. But they possessed one fatal flaw: their ivory tusks, representing perfection, purity, and in time, money. And so the elephant became victim of its own magnificence. Today, its numbers have plummeted, and its very survival is in doubt.
That is Venus. She was a lovely elephant. She was poached.
Why did our love of ivory turn so lethal?
Tusks were in there and there. There's nothing left.
We're facing a situation where elephant could become extinct in the wild.
Now, 2 investigators go undercover and inside the illegal ivory trade and reveal it from both sides. Supply in Africa.
So my friend, you get 1,000 kilos.
Yeah.
And demand in Asia.
You see the tusk moving the curve like this.
You can feel the tusk.
Yeah.
You're seeing $20,000, $100,000, $200,000, and more.
Today, a line has been drawn between those who wish for possessions and those who wish for something much, much larger. In what may be the final battle for the elephants.
Katie, this is absolutely dramatic. Thank you for sharing this, and I'm sure it was really difficult to be able to draw all these lines going from the African continent into Asia, and that's a great challenge, and also your safety, I'm sure, was sometimes compromised. But where did the idea for this film come from?
Well, John and I have been making wildlife conservation films for many years, and it's been some time that we've wanted to do a film about elephants. And then 2 years ago, we made a film for National Geographic on Richard Leakey's search for fossils in northern Kenya called Bones of Turkana. And during the course of that film, Richard said, listen, you two, get on this. Elephant story is huge and nobody's covering it and somebody's got to do something quick. And he had done the math, as many other conservationists had, and he said, well, if we're losing 30 to 35,000 elephants a year to poaching, and there's only 300,000 or 400,000 left, well, then it's just a matter of time. So we got to get on it right away. And John and I were able to convince National Geographic to come with us, and we spent a year in these countries. As you can see, we went undercover in many of them. We spent some time doing the natural history of elephants as well. And, it just seemed like a film whose time had come.
Oh, I tell you, it's absolutely fantastic you share this because it's something the world needs to know about. It happens in these, faraway places, particularly in your country like the United States or Canada, most of Western Europe. But all this is going on in real time, and we need to be aware of that. So what are some of the dangers to the local populations from having these elephants poached, besides just the loss of the animals themselves?
Well, it is a frightening time to live in East Africa. That's where we were filming primarily. And I spent a couple of weeks in the southern part of Tanzania, a reserve called the Selous, which is enormous, the size of Switzerland. Absolutely impossible to patrol with however many rangers they can throw at it. They can't surround the poaching problem there. And we stayed in a camp in the Selous. Every night we heard gunfire, machine gun fire. And every morning there were the remnants of new attacks. And I think the people living there are terrified. But it's also true that the people living in many of these countries are very impoverished, and they have no choice but to do things they do not want to do in order to support their families. So when the Chinese come in and say, we need ivory, we want more ivory, they'll find willing helpers in that. And so it's a big job, and the governments are now finally waking up and saying we're going to do something about it. But just yesterday in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, they found a cache of ivory in the home of 3 Chinese nationals, 706 pieces of ivory. They counted it up. It amounts to 200 dead elephants killed in the last month. So whatever they say they're doing to enforce the anti-poaching regulations, they have not been successful yet.
Well, looking at all this, and we're now talking about the human toll and this whole process and the poachings going on, looking at what is the long term. I know we're talking about the virtual extinction of these elephants. What do you think in your investigative work can be done to balance the demand for the ivory, the need for income within these impoverished nations, and also countries who really just do not have the economic wherewithal to protect the precious resources that they have?
Well, you're so right about that. It seems that what's needed is a campaign that works both on the supply side in Africa and on the demand side in Asia. And National Geographic supported us last year in an effort. We did a market survey. We commissioned a very expensive full market survey in mainland China to try to understand what was driving the demand for ivory among modern Chinese. Of course, you know that it's a burgeoning middle class there. They have such incredible purchasing power. And there's something about ivory that just attracts their attention, and they want to buy more and more of it. It's often used for gifting, it's used for ceremonial purposes, but more than anything, it conveys a kind of status which many Chinese, many Asians are really interested in conveying at this time. And when the economic growth is happening in their country, they think, why not? So their country hasn't enforced the laws very well, and in Africa, it's been very difficult to enforce the laws when there's so many willing buyers. It's kind of like the war on drugs. You can't just throw money at it, and you can't just throw weapons at it. You've got to really find a way to curtail the demand very cleverly. So there are groups working on that right now. We've partnered with the Wildlife Conservation Society to try to launch a social media campaign worldwide to try to make sure everybody is educated about this and knows that there is no reason to buy ivory, no matter what you're purchasing that's made out of ivory. You can get it in another substance. The little Buddhas that we have on our desks, they come in jade too. That's the important thing to remember.
And there's plenty of jade everywhere, and that would go to actually add many more jobs than what's going on with the ivory. Bill Busker, who is Executive Vice President of the Emerald Planet, sitting with me in case, Katie, we lose you by Skype. We're doing very well, so he's going to ask the next question. Bill?
Katie, what would you like the audience to take away from the film?
Well, thank you for asking that question. We've been taking the film all over the country and to other countries as well to try to convey to people that the existence of this magnificent creature on our planet is not guaranteed. Everybody has to help. And anybody who's interested in the ivory, in the elephant conservation movement and the Stop Ivory campaign can go to the Wildlife Conservation Society website. They can sign up there to be a part of the campaign. They can donate money. They can write letters to their legislators. We're trying right now to get a ban on domestic ivory trading here in the United States, one of the few countries that still allows it. It's perplexing. So anybody who wants to get involved in that, they can go to wcs.org and take part, and then we'll all be part, hopefully, a part of saving the elephants.
Katie, we only have about 60 seconds left, so this will need to be quick. But what's next on your agenda, following Battle for the Elephants?
Well, as you can imagine, we'll be making a sequel, but it's broadened to include other animals very, very endangered for the very same reason: rhinos, tigers, sharks, and others. We feel that the world needs to really jump in the case of some of these animals whose end is near. We need to quickly save them while we can.
Well, we actually have about another 15 seconds. Anything you want to add?
Well, I think if you don't know anything about elephants, you definitely need to Google around. Go on YouTube. Elephants are amazing. They're so smart. They raise their families the way we do. They can communicate in very complex language. They mourn their dead. They're just amazing animals. We need to save them.
Well, thank you. Katie Carpenter, who is the producer of Battle for the Elephants and also is on the advisory board for the Environmental Film Festival in the nation's capital. Thank you for being with us and sharing this very relevant topic. And the fact is that we have to protect the elephants just like we protect the environment. It's very important. So, dear viewer, thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. One in some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about pretty dogs, nothing very nice. Homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of Emerald Planet in Washington, D.C. We come to you on a weekly basis looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for what we call the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And of course, we're always talking about the people that are providing the leadership, the education, the health care, and the intellectual property that's going to accommodate a planet with 9 billion people by 2050, and how we're going to be able to do that. And we have a gentleman coming on who has been working on a very interesting project up in the Arctic zone, and his name is Dr. Joel Heath. He is a director of People of a Feather. And Joel, I must say I admire the fact that you could survive up in the Arctic zone for, I think, 7 winters running. I'm going to be going up there in the next couple of years, but 7 years? That's pretty severe.
Yeah, I highly recommend an eider down duvet.
Well, I've spent, I always say I've never seen grass in Russia because I only go there in the dead of winter. All the other Westerners are leaving and I'm going in, and I absolutely do love it, so I understand the attraction. But tell us about the film People of a Feather, but more than that, why did you choose this title?
Yeah, it took me a while to come up with that title, but it really represents the film well. The community that I've been working with, called Sanakilawa, is based in the middle of Hudson Bay, and there was no caribou there. So instead of using caribou for their clothing and food, they used the eiderduck, which has the warmest feather in the world, the eiderdown. And so that's what they use for their clothing and what they use as the main source of food throughout the year. And I went up there doing my PhD studying sea ice ecology, looking at eiders in response to concerns from the community about these large die-offs that have happened, thousands and thousands of birds dead on the ice in the middle of winter. One elder described it as many birds were there on the ice as there is sand on the beach. And so we were looking to understand what was causing these die-offs and what was affecting the ability of the birds to get through the winter.
Well, we're going to give a trailer so that the audience, both here and abroad, will have an idea of what it is we're talking about, this People of a Feather, and then we'll carry on from there. So, Joel, we'll be right back with you.
mga hargasato kunyari kuno simitiya rinam kun.
When the main powerhouse starts spewing 350 times the natural amount of fresh water into this closed system, it will be converted from a salt to a freshwater habitat with profound effects on currents and ice formation. Timing is critical.
Joel, that's absolutely breathtaking. Thank you for sharing that with us. That has not only the essence of the nature, the environment, but there's a real spiritual quality to your work that I think carries far beyond just the challenges of this area. But tell us a little bit about the Inuit people that you were living and working with to do this over those 7 winters. And where are they coming from in a very modern 21st century, living on a lifestyle that goes back, hundreds, possibly thousands of years?
Yeah, exactly, and a lot's changed, but there's still a lot that's fairly similar. And so we really felt compelled to do these recreations of 100 years ago, partly because Robert Flaherty, the grandfather of documentary, got started up there and had lost his footage, but also to kind of show how using nature's technology as kind of how people have used eider ducks to stay warm in the winter, both in the past, and how they're really relevant in the future right now. So the big issue that Inuit in Hudson Bay have been dealing with, you hear, I went up there as well, kind of thinking about effects of climate change. But from talking to Inuit there, I learned that hydroelectric projects are actually affecting sea ice more in Hudson Bay than climate change. And Inuit have been trying to address this issue for over 30 years now. And part of the issue is that a lot of power is used in the middle of winter. So instead of the rivers flowing in the spring, they now flow in the middle of the winter onto the sea ice. And that affects the ice in a number of different ways. One main thing being that freshwater freezes at warmer temperatures done a lot quicker than saltwater. So when you get a cold snap, huge areas can freeze up really, really quick, trapping wildlife, including eiders. And this year, when Hydro-Quebec was breaking their electricity demands, it coincided with some of the most freshest water we've ever seen that our charity community-based monitoring teams were measuring. And that was at the same time as the orcas were getting trapped up there, and over 70 of the whales were trapped at the same time. And so, it affects the wildlife, it affects the whole ecosystem, it affects safety for hunters traveling out on the ice. It's still really important for people to bring back local free-range organic country food from the land to their community. That's still a really important part of their economy. And so people have been really concerned about this, and that's why we made the film, and why we're continuing to work through the charity to try and not just show the film, but to bring this knowledge into action.
Well, I know that you're working very closely with the Inuit, and they're very resourceful, smart, and dynamic people. They're very sensitive to the environment within which they live. How do you feel they see your filmmaking, and how do they believe that you're furthering and enhancing who they are and what they're doing, and also international understanding about who the Inuit is as a people, but how they're having to cope with a very dire situation based on the demands of a very different society and culture than what they're used to?
Yeah, it's been really exciting. When we first showed the film in the community, people were really excited and supportive, and we knew that we had the good momentum to show it around the rest of the world. And there's a hip-hop video in there, and some of the kids have even watched that the film like 3 times in a row when we first showed it there, and they've been asking us, how can we get involved in doing research? And so when you have kids, some of them who were dropouts from high school, asking how they can get involved in research programs, that's really amazing momentum, and something we've been trying to make the most of. And people have been really excited and supportive. We're in New York right now about to show it, and all over the world we've been showing this film, and the response from the public has been really amazing, just to learning about this unique culture, the relationship with eiders, but also about this issue. So we're really enthusiastic that because of this public knowledge and momentum behind us, we can actually start to move forward in terms of addressing some of these issues through basic water management and open access to hydrological data from these rivers that are required to assess the cumulative impacts on the marine ecosystem.
Well, this goes directly to the request by the youth within these Inuit communities. How do we get involved in research? They're actually part of it as we speak. As you know, William Busker, is sitting right beside me. He's the Executive Vice President with Emerald Planet. And he's here in case, Joel, we would lose you by Skype. We haven't, so he's going to ask the next question. Bill?
Hi, Joel. Which is the more severe threat, the sea ice or the hydroelectric dams? And where are the dams located, and how are the Inuit adjusting to this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the cumulative impacts of hydroelectric projects all over Hudson Bay. There's a huge amount of water that's now impacted. So there's projects in Manitoba and Ontario and Quebec and Labrador, and all these dams flow into Hudson Bay. The ones in Labrador flow into the Labrador Current, which is a bit of a bigger issue I can talk about. So it's the changing ice is being affected by hydroelectric impacts, and so you would actually see that as a bigger problem than climate change. But at the big scale, all these rivers flow into the Labrador Current, and the Labrador Current drives the Gulf Stream by cold, salty water sinking, and we're putting warm, fresh water into it from reservoirs during critical period for sea ice formation. So that's a whole kettle of fish that needs to be looked at that drives global climate change. So it's that's something we're trying to raise awareness about as well.
What role did the what's called the Arctic Elder Society play in actually producing this film?
Yeah, the Arctic Elder Society was a charity that we started to raise funding, and we officially became a charity kind of partway through the process of making the film. So it's basically related to the production company, and we wanted to take this film and not just make a film and finish it and leave the community. It was to kind of set up a long-term legacy to our international polar year programs and to the film, and to kind of continue to work through community-based monitoring. So proceeds from the film go to the charity to kind of continue this work.
We only have about 30 seconds left, and we're going to have to leave you, Joel, but what do you see the most profound changes for the people of the North in the Arctic Circle over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And we only have about 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, all the states in New England and New York are looking to increase hydroelectric imports from Canada. So there's a big push. It's going to involve building new dams potentially. And so there's potentially a lot of impacts coming up that are going to affect communities. And so we really want to make sure that people are aware that, hydro projects aren't just clean and green. There are ways that they could be. And so hopefully this will be considered in those impacts.
Well, Dr. Joel Heath, who is a director of People of a Feather, thank you for being with us on the Emerald Planet. It was really a great pleasure having you here. It's a phenomenal film that you have, and we'll look forward to seeing that in Washington, D.C. And Bill Busker, thank you for being here for Skype. Thank you for watching as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.